Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News channel. I think the audio is proper. Yes, it is. We're good. So tonight, immigration is the focus of tonight's program. And we have a whistleblower joining us tonight. Someone from India who is going to highlight some big problems with the immigration systems, both in Canada and in India, the way they work together, and a lot of the problems that he has encountered. He will shed new light on this subject. He will bring us a perspective that I'm pretty sure you have not received from any other media source to date. So we'll be going to, what was I going to say? He'll be joining us shortly in the broadcast. Also, we will be opening the phone lines so that you can call in and ask him questions as well. So that's the main focus. We'll touch tonight as well a little bit on some of the top news stories. I'm not sure yet what we're going to be saying about Iran because the situation over there is fluid, or Cuba, fluid, changing by the minute. It appears the United States is ready to launch some sort of massive attack on Iran really at any moment. So we definitely have one eye on that tonight as well. So stay with us. We will be right back with today's top news and this exclusive story that will give us insight into Canada's immigration system.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
There we go. We're back. And tonight, Donald Trump still upset about the Supreme Court rejection of many of his tariffs, which will definitely have an impact on Canada. So tonight, he is, well, over the past 24 hours, he has ramped up his displeasure. Yesterday, we reported that he was going to, well, he was responding with a global 10% tariff in reaction under a different provision, a different piece of legislation that he says still gives him the right to impose tariffs on countries around the world. So he's gone global with his tariff war and has since increased from 10% to 15% in less than 24 hours. So, as it says here, most of Trump's tariffs struck down in that Supreme Court decision yesterday in a 6-3 decision. Trump raises global tariff to 15% shortly after implementing reworked 10% levy. You never know what's coming from one moment to the next from the White House these days. Justices divided 6-3 ruled Trump's aggressive approach to tariffs on imports from across the world was not permitted under the 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, and the ruling yesterday invalidated the vast majority of tariffs that were in effect, except for some sector-specific duties, such as those on automobiles, car parts, and semiconductor chips. But he has come back and said, I, as president of the United States, will be effective immediately, raising the 10% worldwide tariff on countries, many of which have been ripping the U.S. off for decades without retribution until I came along to the fully allowed and legally tested 15% level. And it says here on NBC tonight that despite the revised level, Trump's universal tariff will still result in a major cut to tariffs applied to most key trading partners. For some, it would remain the same. This is still in flux. And this new tariff is being implemented under the new so-called global tariff under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. It's a different law. But it ain't over yet. The fat lady hasn't sung her song, as they say. Speaking of, and the reason I mention that is that for me, that's a hockey reference. And it looks like Team Canada and the USA will be facing off in the Olympic finals tomorrow. I know that Sidney Crosby, we were supposed to find out what's happening with him. Is he going to play or not? I honestly haven't been following. We still don't know. So, yeah, we should find out later. But yesterday, when all of the news was coming down about the tariffs and the decision from the Supreme Court, I went over to the social media feed for Mark Carney to see what he might be posting, and there was nothing. He was posting about the Olympics and Canada going to the final matchup with the United States. So that'll be a big one. And I've seen memes online too, talking about whoever wins Canada. Donald Trump makes a bet with Mark Carney. Whoever wins the hockey game gets Canada. So the stakes are high tomorrow, folks. Very, very high indeed. Let's start talking a little bit now to kind of set the stage for tonight's conversation that we're going to have on immigration. It kind of starts. We should start really with what happened this week with Danielle Smith out in Alberta, because this tonight is really a larger story about immigration in general. And Danielle Smith has announced a referendum on immigration for October 19th. So this was a surprise announcement, a province-wide referendum. It's a 9-question ballot blitz, which I think is very odd. It's strange. 9 questions. For me, I think it feels more like a poll or a survey more than a referendum, but especially because of the way the wording is structured through all of this. But Danielle Smith is saying that it's aimed at tackling out of control immigration and shaking up Canada's constitution. So, as I pointed out, sometimes in politics, you win by losing. My guess is that's partly what's going on here. I think whatever comes out of this referendum thing that is happening on October 19th, I think Danielle Smith is kind of setting it up so that they will take a loss of some kind, even if they get a positive result on the referendum. I think it'll whatever legislation might ultimately come out of it would probably be challenged under Canadian law, and they probably would lose, which it just sets up a whole martyrdom thing at a political level. But in any event, if you've been feeling the squeeze in Alberta, longer wait times at hospitals, packed schools, a budget that's in the red, Smith says she has this culprit, federal immigration policies. And so she went live to the entire province in a televised address this week, declaring Alberta's population boom fueled by high immigration is overwhelming social services. And yet there is some hypocrisy there, because it was not long ago she was all for as much immigration as Alberta could get, saying that she wanted to double the province's population. Now, I think she's just kind of reading the room, so to speak, and has taken immigration on as a political issue, a plank in a political platform. And somebody, I guess we have a birthday in the chat tonight, I guess. Mustang Sandy is 65. Happy birthday, Sandy. I haven't looked in the chat yet, but I'm getting an important message. Mustang Sandy is officially old today, being on this earth for 65 years. Don't know if I should be sad or privileged. Just be happy. Just be happy. That's all. Just embrace it. Be the best 65 you can be. In my head, I'm still 20. Till I get up in the morning and I roll out of bed. I'm like, ah. And I'm not quite there, but I'm going to catch up to you. I'm on my way to 65, but it's going to be a while. Don't tell any of those younglings out there, especially these conservative influencers who are blaming all bad things on boomers. I guess they've lumped me in with the boomers now. Bunch of granny bashers they are. But anyway, I digress. Although that's sort of related to what we're talking about here, because they also blame immigration, high immigration levels, and the stresses on our social services on boomers, because we're an easy target, you see, especially the grannies who never get out of bed, the older ones, in any event. So we have Danielle Smith, once a champion of rapid newcomer growth, now pivoting hard. She's proposing a Quebec-style model where Alberta gets more control over who comes in and how they're integrated into the community, into society, Canadian or Alberta society. And she is talking about, provincial control over immigration. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out. That's what I think they mean by Quebec-style immigration policies. But I don't know, once someone becomes a Canadian citizen or has rights here in this country, I don't know how you prevent them from moving from one province to another. In any event, though, there are provisions that have been made for Quebec to help preserve their culture, and those are long-standing accommodations. But wait, there's more. If a separatist petition gathers enough signatures, a 10th question on Alberta separation could join the ballot on October 19th. So that's a key part of all of this. And we know canvassers are out there as well, gathering signatures out in Alberta in this controversial separatist movement, to say the least. And I would say the legitimacy of it may be even questionable because of the foreign influence that is very apparent, with BC Premier David Eby being the first to come out and actually use that T word, treason. We'll see if any of that sticks. Anyway, we'll keep on tracking this story as it unfolds. That vote now just 8 months away. So you can expect heated debates all across Alberta and Canada and here tonight as we dig into the immigration aspect of all of this here on Maverick News. And you can weigh in on the conversation when we go to the phones shortly. And we start getting the story from our whistleblower tonight, who is going to tell us about a lot of the problems with the immigration system. And you know, the problems with immigration here in Canada are really the result, I would say, of politics, improper management of immigration, the issues surrounding all of it are rooted in politics. And with that, I'm going to take a little break while I queue up my videos and my notes, and we'll be right back on the other side of...
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV,
the entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Also, that military buildup in the Middle East, that is the largest U.S. military buildup since the Iraq War. They have a lot of firepower over there, and they're moving their assets into position. It does look like there is an attack imminent over there. So we have our eye on that one tonight as well. But, you know, first up, let's start talking about this immigration issue. It's a story that's really been simmering for years and boiling over recently. Involves this complex interplay between Canada's massive Indian diaspora, Khalistani separatism, immigration policies, and the diplomatic fallout with India. So first, let's cover how the Liberal government welcomed separatists, sparking tensions, and how Conservatives are courting the pro-India side, the shocking assassinations on our soil, political flip-flops, the religious divides most Canadians overlook, and how all of this is fueling a rise in right-wing politics amid record immigration numbers. This is, you know, foreign policy, yes, but it's more than that. It's hitting home in our communities, our economy, our elections, you know, and it has reshaped the face of many communities across Canada in certain areas. There's no question about that. Changing demographics change communities. Canada has a huge Indian diaspora, and it's a growing powerhouse. Canada hosts one of the largest Indian diasporas, in fact, with nearly 2.9 million people of Indian origin as of this year, and that's up from about 1.86 million in the 2021 census, making Indo-Canadians around about 7% of the Canadian population. The community is concentrated in places like Ontario and British Columbia, with strong ties to Punjab, home to many Sikh immigrants. The diaspora brings economic benefits, which are quite apparent. And Indian immigrants often fill key jobs in tech, healthcare, and business. But rapid growth fueled by student visas, work permits, and asylum claims, they've also imported historical tensions from India, like the push for Khalistan, an independent Sikh state. But how do we get here? Well, let's take a look at the politics. Under Justin Trudeau's Liberals, immigration from India skyrocketed from 32,828 permanent residents in 2013 to a peak of about almost 140,000 in 2023. That was an increase of over 300%. So critics, including the Indian government, argued this influx included Khalistani separatists, Sikhs advocating for independence from India, rooted in 1980s grievances like the anti-Sikh riots and Operation Blue Star. And Canada has been labeled a safe haven for these groups. We've seen Khalistan referendums organized here with events like a big one in Ottawa. Well, just it's happening all the time. You see them. And they're drawing crowds despite controversies, including flag desecrations and anti-India slogans. And the Liberals' high immigration targets were seen as vote farming by many in Sikh-heavy ridings. In short, it's created a powder keg of conflict. That's why, and for the most Canadians regardless of what other communities or background you might have, if you're not familiar with what has been going on in India and the Khalistan movement and the issues surrounding that, when you drive by and you see these protests or you see it online, it's confusing, right? It's like, what the hell is that? And all those crazy people over there fighting. And there has been some real tension between the two groups, because what they've done is they've really brought the conflict, the separatist conflict from India, right here to Canada. You have two different groups fighting, and so you get this kind of stuff.
I don't agree with this protest in the sense that they are standing on a country's flag, which is absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Not acceptable. There is a right to protest, but not in this manner. I don't agree with that.
So that's video that, of course, many of you have probably seen from Mocha Bezergan, who's one of the streamers who goes out and covers a lot of protests. And so, of course, in India, the permissiveness of the Canadian government has not gone unnoticed in New Delhi. because the policies have severely strained Canadian-India relations. India accuses Canada of harboring extremists, terrorists, who are literally threatening the sovereignty of India. And the flashpoint, the 2023 assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a prominent Khalistani activist in Surrey, BC. Then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau publicly blamed Indian agents, leading to diplomatic expulsions and trade halts. The accusation being that the government of India was involved in the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Khalistani activist. So tensions persist right to today with ongoing investigations and similar U.S. cases. Everything is at a fever pitch, really, but there is hope for a thaw, perhaps under new Prime Minister Mark Carney's guidance, who has appointed new high commissioners, resumed trade talks, and has seen Modi and Carney meet at global summits. So that could be a positive sign for a thaw in relations. There they are, shaking hands. The thing to kind of keep in mind here, just to put it in perspective, is this is politics as thick as it gets. But as thick as it is really masked from the understanding of many Canadians who are not familiar with India politics or Indian politics, or most people, I would say most Canadians are not even aware of what the issues are surrounding the Khalistani separatist movement. So what you have had is the Conservatives, who have been sort of reaching out to the pro-Indian government faction of the diaspora from India, mostly Hindus, Muslims, and moderate Sikhs, who support the Indian government and Modi's vision of a unified India. And they've been criticizing the Liberals for enabling separatism and promised reforms like fixing the broken asylum system to weed out extremists. So this group sees Khalistan as a fringe threat and appreciates Conservatives' tougher stance on immigration, tying it to housing and job pressures and these sorts of things. And so there's this divide. The Liberals really kind of reaching out to all people in the Indian diaspora here, but really protecting even the Khalistani activists who are now Canadian citizens and live with the shield of Canadian citizenship, which protects them. The Nijjar killing wasn't isolated. 4 Indian nationals are charged, but trials are mired in secrecy to protect intelligence. U.S. prosecutors, and this is where the border issue comes in, link similar plots to Indian officials, raising alarms about foreign assassinations here, echoing the 1985 Air India bombing, Canada's worst terror attack tied to Khalistani extremists. And so even though there's this real tie to Canada because of the Khalistani movement, I would say the vast majority of Canadians are probably not even aware or don't understand what the issue is about. And these events underscore transnational repression risks, damaging trust, and highlighting how diaspora politics can turn literally deadly. And so politicians have played both sides. Liberals ramped up immigration for votes in diaspora communities, but now under Carney, they're slashing targets down 100,000 from 2024 peaks amid these housing problems. Trudeau was slammed as a nauseating hypocrite for decrying Indian interference while ignoring others. And even Indian officials have called out Canada's hypocrisy on free speech related to all of this. And average Canadians, as I say, many have no clue about these issues, seeing immigration as just numbers, not the Khalistani versus pro-India splits fueling all of it. It has turned into a damn mess. And as I say, it goes back decades. And all you have to do is look to former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, who, in the view of some, is the poster child, the poster former premier for hypocrisy, because here he is recently on the Atlantic channel with David Frum, and just listen to Jason Kenney on, was one of the biggest advocates and promoters of immigration. Now he's dialing that back and is taking a completely different, well, not a completely different stand, but a harder line in immigration. But just to illustrate my point, as he acknowledges here in this interview, very pro-immigration, but keep in mind that he is a conservative at the provincial level at the time when he was premier. And these guys appealing more to the government side of things. And so if you understand that, you begin to understand the politics on Canadian soil as it relates to the immigration issue and people coming from India.
Let me ask you now about your other portfolio, citizenship and immigration, which in Canada is one of the most important portfolios in the government because Canada is such an immigration country and continues to be. And I'm just going to, you won't say this, so let me say it for you. You were not just a minister. I mean, you were the leader of a comprehensive political transformation of the Conservative Party, where I can't begin to imagine how many Lunar New Year's, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, dedication ceremonies you went to, and what a toll it took on you personally, psychically, to do it. But
yes, it's true.
You learned greetings.
My nickname was the Minister of Curry in a Hurry. My nickname was the Minister of Curry in a Hurry because I would do as many as 5 curry banquets in a night.
and you record greetings in Vietnamese and in Punjabi and in Italian. And so this was.
But yeah, curry in a hurry. So that's, him just acknowledging how aggressive he was on the pro-immigration side. But things have changed. Let me see if I can find the clip that I want to show you. Just recently, he comes out and, again, kind of playing both sides off against the middle. Maybe I can't find it. Some of these clips I've had queued up. But he came out and he's now accusing the Liberals of kind of rubber stamping visa applications and not checking things closely enough. Well, if I can find the clip, I'll bring it up later. But in fact, let me just take a little break here so I can get some more things queued. It's a complex issue. Digest those little nuggets. We'll be right back.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, so Kenney comes out this week criticizing the Canadian government, then makes other controversial statements saying that, calling the Dominion Society racist for their stance on immigration. Here's what he had to say in this Toronto Sun interview.
I can tell you from inside sources that under political pressure, the Immigration Refugee Board, which makes these decisions, has begun years ago virtually rubber stamping all claims from certain countries of origin. And I'll explain one reason is that if you're a adjudicator for the refugee board looking at one of these cases and you say no, you have to write a lengthy decision explaining your reasons, which is a bit of a hassle. You have to spend a couple days writing your decision. And then that decision is reviewable in the courts and so forth. And but if you just approve someone, no fuss, no muss, you don't even have to have an oral hearing. You just look at so the incentives are very strong. So what I'm trying to say is,
you don't get promoted if you reject.
Yeah, what I'm trying to exactly that as well. They're under pressure to hit their numbers, their quotas. That's the political pressure from the government. I can tell you.
Okay, so that's what he's saying just in this past week. I believe that was from this past week. And if you go and watch that entire interview that he did with David Frum, later, not very long after, he talks about it's soft language, but he's suggesting or alluding to the idea that the numbers have to be really cut and maybe some people deported. So at least that's what I got from the interview. He doesn't come out and say it in those words, but that's kind of what I got from it. He says, it's pretty clear, paraphrasing, what needs to be done is the way he kind of wrapped things up. What I'll do is I'll put the link for that interview in the chat for you at some point tonight. In fact, there it is right there. So I'll put it in there now. If you want to watch that whole interview, former Alberta Premier, former federal immigration minister Jason Kenney, there's the link. No title with it, just under Maverick 581. So again, like there he goes again, kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth at the same time. And now Danielle Smith being accused of doing the same thing, kind of putting this immigration referendum front and center for October 19th. But all you have to do is go back probably not even a year, and you'll hear her talking about, increasing immigration and getting as many new Canadians to come to Alberta as she possibly can. But now reading the room, taking note of the shift in the Overton political window, the changing political flavor, and the winds are changing. So she has her finger in the air and she says, "Oh, well, I think maybe we'll do this now." So you really don't know with these people what to expect. And then with this rise of the political right in Canada, you have the Dominion Society, which has been out there calling out this hypocrisy, but then calling for an outright moratorium on all immigration for about a 10-year period. So you go back here now to Jason Kenney, and let me see here. Yeah, so he is here. And he called the Dominion Society racist this past week as well. That brought him under fire from people in that political camp. And I believe that's the page I was looking for, which is right there. Jason Kenney, proud to be the 18th Premier of Alberta, says here, he says, "I see some people are upset about my characterization of Daniel Tyree and his Dominion Society as racist. They claim he is just questioning mass immigration, and to do so is not racist. I agree that questioning or opposing mass immigration is not racist, and engaging in serious good faith debate about immigration policy isn't racist either. I have long opposed mass immigration, if by that we mean the irresponsible levels of the Trudeau government or large-scale illegal migration, as seen in the US and Europe in recent years, etc. For years, I have called for a steep reduction of Canadian immigration levels to correspond to our capacity to settle and integrate people. I've done so in public debates, media commentaries, social media, etc. As Canada's longest-serving Minister of Immigration, that's at the federal level, I implemented the most wide-ranging and profound reforms to strengthen Canada's system in decades, tackling all forms of fraud and abuse, improving the selection of newcomers, focusing on the duty to integrate, etc., despite overheated rhetoric from Open Borders left. No one is illegal, blah, blah, blah. None of that was racist. To the contrary, it was essential to maintain public support for immigration as a positive factor in Canadian society. But all of that is perfectly irrelevant, he says, to my claim that Tyree and his group are racist, which is blindingly obvious. Tyree and his group are not just opposed, he says, to mass immigration, but to any immigration. It says so on their website, where they call for a total moratorium on all immigration for a minimum of 10 years. Their core demand is re-migration, as they pronounce it, including mass deportation of millions of permanent residents who were invited to immigrate to Canada legally, plus naturalized Canadian citizens, particularly those who are not heritage Canadians. That's obviously a euphemism for people of white European ancestry. It's unclear whether they regard Indigenous people whose ancestors have lived there for millennia as heritage Canadians. Tyree and his group are clearly associated with and applaud the efforts of Second Sons of Canada, who cosplay as weird airsats paramilitary group, think Antifa for right-wing incels, masked and dressed in black while protesting for remigration. Tyree and his group obsessively use images of turbaned Sikhs in their agate prop, obviously, because turban Sikhs are the most visible of visible minorities. They mock Conservative Deputy Leader Tim Uppal as Turban Tim. Of course, there isn't even room for basic human compassion in their racial hatred. One day after the Tumbler Ridge massacre, Tyree's wingman, Max Genest, posted the following on X about a beloved 12-year-old black child who was murdered. Abel Mwansa Reem would have saved his life. So it goes on and on and on here. And so there's definitely a divide there on the right, but I have to wonder about the real convictions of, ethical and moral, of Jason Kenney and people in the other groups as well. Where do they really stand? Well, I think we know where the Dominion Society stands pretty clearly. But as for Jason Kenney or Danielle Smith, I think they kind of flip and flop, and their position changes depending on the way the wind is blowing at any given time. So the key to much of what we're talking about here is corruption. It is about fraud, immigration fraud, which is what our whistleblower is going to talk to us about tonight. And we're going to bring him in when we come back on the other side of this. So do not go away. We'll be right back.
Greetings, brave mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. So before we get to our whistleblower, I just want to point out a couple of aspects to this broader story of immigration that are important. And I've touched on this here. You have the groups who are saying, just send them all back, which I don't agree with, because you're turning into a monster when you start going down those roads. What is important to highlight is that it's kind of a two-way street. And this is low-hanging fruit for any politician that wants to turn hate into votes, anger and through anger and confusion, and by pointing a finger of blame at an identifiable group, which is one of the oldest tricks in the book. But you know, it is it's you can't blame the people who come here directly because they've been promised things or sold ideas or even sold a dream, literally, where they put up money to come here, and sometimes misled, sometimes even ripped off, sometimes brought here and under false stories. I highlighted many months ago, and one of our Mavericks was involved in this, reposting social media videos where it was just, it looks like someone from India talking about all of the free money and the free benefits that they get when they come here, and telling people about all the great free things, the childcare, the free room and board, the meals, the thousands of dollars a month. And that's been used by some of these groups, those kinds of videos reposted online by groups that are in favor of remigration. But the information in a lot of those videos, it has been false, not really true. And the reason the information is not true is because those videos were really not directed at us as just people who are already here in Canada from other diasporas or other cultural groups. They're really directed back at the people in India to tell them lies, to get them to think that if they come here, they're going to have all these social supports and a lot of money. And then they get connected with consulting firms that promise them visas and an easy pathway to citizenship or permanent residency here, or a student visa in order to come to Canada. And they're charged thousands and thousands of dollars, and then they get here or they arrive here only to find that things were not actually properly handled, and they're sometimes sent back, or they get here and they don't have any support and they get scammed and ripped off. In fact, it's going on even as we speak on a smaller scale right now because of the FIFA Cup. And I'll just bring this up. Now, I highlighted one of these things, and I called out one of our Mavericks one night because this person was sharing those videos, but was doubling down on it. And that's, a story from some time back. But here it is: misleading videos on social media are targeting travelers to Canada for the FIFA World Cup. And they're talking about visitors' visas, and they're charging some people from India thousands of dollars improperly, selling visa application packages right here for 150,000 Indian rupees, about $2,200 Canadian. Purportedly includes embassy fees, match tickets, biometrics, and consultancy fees. So you see, a lot of this becomes a double blow, double damage to people from India coming here, because on the one hand, they get here and they're being targeted, honestly, let's just face it, with racism and attacks because of that, because they're seen as leeching off the system, and yet they're not receiving the benefits that they were promised by these other scammers, and they're getting ripped off by people from India in many cases, who are running these scam immigration services, encouraging them to come, charging them a lot of money, and not just for temporary visitors visas, but also for things like student visas. And here's an example of that. So these stories are not as cut and dried and as black and white as people think. It says here, this is also another, this CBC. Yeah. She came here to Canada for university, but she'd never been accepted, and the scam cost her $7,000. 2 years later, the victims speak out with hope authorities can do more. Not alone, thousands and thousands of these people, with an admission letter to a Quebec university in hand, Aminata flew from Benin in West Africa to Montreal. This is not an Indian immigrant, but this is an example of one, another immigration scam. And a lot of people from India involved in these. I'm just throwing these out as just quick examples.
This woman thought she was coming to Quebec on a scholarship to earn a degree, but only after she arrived in Chicoutimi for school did she realize she was scammed.
I'm living like with the fear that, you know, at any time I can get deported.
And so a lot of these things are, you know, we don't realize. You don't know what somebody is going through when you just see them in a Tim Hortons, right? What's their life like? What have they been subjected to? Sometimes they're being promised an education in schools that are not really schools. And that's part of a fraud too, in order to get people to, you know, into the country. But at the same time, some of the people are being scammed. And, you know, the trucking industry is going through a lot of this stuff, and employers are largely to blame for a lot of the problems because they're exploiting, taking advantage of, abusing government programs in order to take advantage of immigrants so they can pay lower wages. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking you can't just blame an immigrant for that. You have to put a lot of the blame on the employer because they've set these things up to take advantage of taxpayers and the workers. And in the case of some of these driving schools for truck drivers, a lot of these drivers and the companies they go to work for, the drivers are not being properly trained. And sometimes they're not being paid properly either. So that's resulting in safety issues on the highways. And we've had some of that, you know, some of those issues highlighted here on the program as well, because we have quite a number of truck drivers from the trucking industry who are well aware of those sorts of issues. So there's some balance, I think, that you have to apply to this story and understand that there are victims on all sides here, because there is abuse of the system, corruption, and then, yeah, let's just face it, there is just outright racism that's being amped up and fueled by all of this because people are angry about it. And some of the frustration is justified because the government has not handled a lot of this very well. Of course, there's stress on the healthcare system, especially in Alberta, where the provincial government is responsible for healthcare, but they haven't built a new hospital in that province since 1988. 1988. Since 1988. Did I repeat myself enough? And, well, they've been bringing in more and more immigrants. They haven't been spending the money on the social services. But then they can just point a finger of blame at Ottawa, too, and they take it on the chin over there. And then you get videos like this: cockroach found in Tim Hortons iced coffee in Scarborough. Well, you know where that's going. It's all about the immigrants who work at Tim Hortons. See, blame it on them, which is not fair. Like from Tim Hortons.
Don't have any control on the pest, right? That if it goes over there right now.
Yeah, you know what, man? I'll tell you right now, I know what that scam's all about. I'm just going to call it out. A lot of these videos that I'm seeing, they're putting the cockroaches in the food on purpose and then making the videos because it gets them clicks. And then they make money with their viral videos and all of that BS. So I know that game. With that, I think it's about time to bring our whistleblower in, who's been waiting very patiently now for quite a while in the back room. Let's take another quick short break, and then we will go straight to our guest for tonight. Stay with me.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. Oh, we've lost our focus here. Hang on. That fixes it. Let's bring our guest in. Our immigration whistleblower tonight. Right there. All right, here we go. All right, sir, can you hear me?
Hi, Rick. Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just to let everybody know, our guest is not using his real identity here tonight because of safety concerns for himself and his family, because of what he has been through in India and here in Canada, and because, as we've mentioned, we have had people assassinated on Canadian soil. And with all of those considerations in mind, I know who this person is. I know all about them. I have all of their background information, but we're protecting his identity tonight for those reasons. So would you like to introduce yourself first of all?
Yes, Rick. Thank you. I am Pawan. And first of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity that share my, my plight, that I have been a victim of abuse of power in the capital of India, in Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going on for the last 6 or 7 years. And that incident prompted me that I should come back to Canada with my family, because I was under threat there, and because some powerful people were involved. And I am compelled and hesitant to say that it was a very small matter that began in a small residential society, and there was some disagreement within the society over some little issue of defecation of a dog between two women, and that escalated dramatically because what was the reason was that the woman who objected about the dog was holding herself a position of a judicial officer, although it's a private matter in the society. And at that point, the balance of the power, drastically changed because of her official status. And as an ordinary person, and I was as an elected president of that society, I suddenly found myself involved in two criminal cases, what are called in FIRs, first information reports, with the police station, which just arose because of the alleged conflict between the two women, for the simple reason that I, as a president, had lodged 2 complaints against the husband of that woman, who was a judicial officer. So the issue was there that I was threatened, and I was intimidated, I was harassed, and I have been. I came back to Canada with my family. It was in 2019, and since then I have seen that I have not got any relief, despite following up with the legal process of even filing my counter complaints in the court of law, and providing them the evidence of my false implication and the blatant abuse of the powers. But what happens is that when the public officer, like when they hold and they become party to some personal disputes, they're not even the perception. Here in this case, we have seen the influence and the police actions that has created a serious prejudice and imbalances, because the rule of the law.
Maybe I can just pause for a moment and just some people may have a little difficulty understanding you, but what you're saying is you're living here and you're a permanent resident, but you went back to India, and I think you own property there, and you were the head of the property what did they call it?
I was the head of the association, the Welfare Association of the Residents.
Property Welfare Association, which
Not
is like
Property Welfare Association of the Residents.
Right.
Residents Welfare Association.
So the head of the kind of the community organization there in the neighborhood. And so there were two women. One woman had a dog out walking her dog. This might seem like a minor thing, but this is actually important. And I'll explain why. Out walking the dog defecates near this other woman's home, and it turns into a dispute. This dispute is brought to you because you're the head of the Property Welfare Association, like a community association, neighborhood association. And you then become involved and try to resolve the dispute, only to find out that the woman who's on the other side of this, who owned the home where the dog defecated near, was a judge. And things then escalated to absurd levels. And I'll throw it back to you. Is that basically where this whole thing starts?
Absolutely. And over this very minor issue, which allegedly started from some scuffle between those two women, at the instance of that woman complainant, who was a judge, 9 harsh penal sections were invoked. Although the entire incident was captured in the CCTV camera, and the camera was with the police, local police, and they could have seen it very well in the camera that whether the allegations as have been reported are true or not. But they, even 7 years have passed, they are still keeping the investigation pending, just to keep on harassing, to keep the harassment and the sort of intimidation. This is called the imbalance of power.
Yeah. So, so people understand, we don't have to get into too much of the too much of the minutiae here, or the really fine details about the case as it relates to the dog. But these dog issues, as I've come to find out, in India are really more common than people realize. I'm not sure why, but there are a lot of fights. It's like these issues are quite common among people in India, and I'm not sure why. Is it because some people in India, just for religious reasons or cultural reasons, don't like dogs? Is that part of what it is?
No, it's there's like some people are pet lovers and some people object to. So this is a simple thing, what I will say, not connecting with the religion. But thing is there that it is very common. The fights are very common, and they're escalated to this level, and especially over some very, very petty alleged issues.
Okay. So, yeah, it seems like a petty thing, and I suppose it largely was, but this thing just escalated out of control. And the woman who's the judge really seemed to take offense to your intervention, your involvement in this. And where did it go from there? So I think you said in our pre-interview that it escalated to the involvement of, I think, her husband, who was involved in a park. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was allegedly named and dragged in the incident because as the president of the society, I had made 2 prior complaints with the local police for a husband, where I mentioned that he also fired in the society park over an issue that he was having objection of a boy and a girl sitting in the society park. And then he also assaulted me, and he was creating some disturbances, which I reported in my complaint. So
this judge's husband in a park in the community, and you're in that neighborhood where you've gone back to India, and because there's a boy and a girl sitting in a park, because he's got these old cultural values where to him that's wrong. A boy and a girl should not be in public seen together in a park. And so
this is exactly what he admitted himself when he came to the RW office. He admitted that he had done so, fire in the shot, just for the reason.
Right.
So, this is a mindset. Yeah, I can't comment what is someone's mindset.
And I had to look this stuff up when you were telling me this story because I'm Canadian. So by Canadian, societal standards, it doesn't make sense to me. I found it, like hard to believe that someone would act like that. But in India, there are people, especially older people, who still have those sorts of cultural attitudes or values. So they don't want boys and girls or young teens or whatever, it's seen in public together, not married. And that was how all this happened. And this is the husband of the same judge that was involved in the dog defecation dispute.
And the things didn't stop here. When that girl didn't receive any help, and she allegedly posted on the social media that she is not getting any help from the police. And on the complaint of that woman judge, first information report was registered against that girl for allegedly defaming her. So again, my name was being dragged there while I had no social media account. I had no even comments, no posting. And the police is still checking for the last 7 years. It's very easy to see the post, whatever. So just to try the influence, she implicated again. And 7 years, police has no clue where's the post, why are we dragging this gentleman. So this is the way this power imbalance has really,
So So again, to just kind of help the story so people understand, because we've got a little bit of a language barrier here. You take this to police because there was a shot fired in a public park, you allege, and you say that there was, threats made at the park. So you take this to police, and this dispute between yourself and this woman who is a judge in India continues to ramp up, and you didn't get any real response from police.
Oh, no, absolutely. Rather than respond, police didn't help me. And they, in fact, threatened me at the police station. I was the community head, which was very, very unusual because community heads are there to resolve the problems of the community. And they, in fact, detained me. I made a complaint on behalf of the society. It was not an individual complaint because the police in India, they, under the name of independence of judiciary, they have no clue how to handle even when the matter involved is such a powerful person, even in the private matters or in their personal capacities.
Right. So this is what's going on over in India, and it just continues to escalate and escalate. And then did you receive additional threats that you reported but did not get response to?
Yeah, when I went to India and I filed a complaint, my counter complaint, that I am falsely implicated, and I was pursuing my complaints against her husband also. I was threatened right outside the courtroom while I was witnessing, while I was along with my witness, I was threatened to settle the matter. So I reported again to the police. Nothing happened.
Okay. And you did send me a bunch of documents, and you have documentation of all of the legal proceedings. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. The matter is sub judice. Every evidence I have provided in the court. And in fact, one of the investigating officer, they keep on changing, he came to my home during my last visit to India, and he said, look, you settle the matter. She is misusing her influence as a judge. I have nothing against you. But if you will not settle the matter, I will make you one of the co-accused in the charge sheet. I said, go ahead. But he has not done so. So he has admitted on the record. His recording was also submitted in the court of law and to the commissioner of police. No action taken.
Okay, so this is all over in India, and this is a thing that has just spiraled way out of control. It's become much larger than it ever should have become, but it did. And it got to the point, and we're going to get to the Canadian side of this in a moment, but you felt that your safety was eventually in danger, and the safety of your family. Can you explain that?
My family has not gone back to India in last 7 years. I have gone back 3 times in connection with my pursuing my cases. That 2 complaints lodged by the woman are still pending investigation, whereas I have filed my complaint as an aggrieved person who has been falsely implicated. but they are still in the process of subjugating. No action has been taken despite my explicitly providing an irrefutable evidence of my alibi. The CCTV cameras are with the police and the recording that he's acting under influence. This made me so much threatened that I have been totally, and in fact, police have made me just like a runaway by making a forced and misleading statements in the same court that this man is not available for investigation, whereas I am pursuing the case in the same court. It is so mockery. It is a perverse justice. I am going to the court. I am appearing by the video conferences from Canada. I am appearing in person last year in India, and still the police said this person is not available. So that made me so threatening with this system that I don't know what to do, because my life is very danger, and I'm keeping my identity close here because I know there are some people, they're very powerful people. They may have some connections in Canada also. If I disclose, you never know. I'm not safe even in Canada because of their powerful connections.
Okay. So because of a dog defecation issue and an issue in a park, this thing blows up out of control to the point where you say you had to move your family to Canada. And is it this incident that you referenced for the Canadian government to bring your family here?
No, when I went to India, I referred this matter, and but I didn't receive. I will categorically say this is not the matter of any involvement of the any government of India matter, because what happens is that they consider, and it is judiciary is independent.
What I'm really asking here is, how did you come to Canada? Under what conditions, or how did you get entry into Canada under?
Oh, okay. I came to Canada earlier, and I was living here for a few years. So as a permanent resident, as a landed immigrant, based on in the skilled category, in 2018 I returned back to India, and I thought that maybe I will have my children educate there because I have the house and roots there. And at that time, people elected me as the president. And after this incident, I was a permanent resident. My wife was a Canadian citizen by that time. So I came back. I didn't take refuge, but I came back as a permanent resident since my wife was also. So we returned back to Canada.
Okay. So your wife, your kids, how were they admitted into Canada? Under what conditions or provisions? Are they the student visas, or did they just get permanent residency because you were already given permanent residency and so they were allowed to come with you? Or what permissions were granted, or under what permissions was access to Canada and living here granted to your kids and your wife? And are they still, like, are they here permanently, or are they facing any kind of a date where they have to return to India?
No.
No, you're all here.
We all my wife was Canadian citizen when we went back to India in 2018. So when this incident happened, I and my family came back to India. My children, myself, all were permanent residents.
Before we get into that, I just want to establish, is your whole family here permanently, regardless of what happens with this incident?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear, because what some people are probably wondering is this some sort of a scam? Is he using this incident to try to get his kids permanent residency here, or something like that, under an asylum seekers thing? So I just want to establish that you're already here. You're here permanently. You're here permanently with your family. Your whole family is here permanently, regardless of this incident. But the reason we're highlighting this incident tonight is, well, you can explain, why did you want to bring attention to this dispute, this big legal dispute, and these alleged threats that you say you've been subjected to back in India? Why is that important to what's going on here in Canada?
There are two aspects. My family, they all are Canadian citizens. So as a Canadian, I am bringing this issue that, like the USA and other countries, they take care of the citizens. I just want to bring to the attention that the Canadian citizens should feel safe in Canada and everywhere across the world.
Yeah.
If a Canadian citizen is not safe in Canada, if he cannot share his details, that maybe the local police may say that your safety is in danger. You're up to your own to make your own arrangements. This is why I want to bring it.
So what you're saying is you feel unsafe, and now you even feel unsafe in Canada because you feel that these threats leveled against you in India are now present here in Canada as well, that the judge there and whomever this person is connected to has connections so vast that this can even reach out and touch you in Canada. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It has been going on. We have been reading newspapers everywhere, shootings in the Brampton, Vancouver. You never know. There are millions of Indians here, Canadians, Canadians of Indian origin root. You never know that such influential people, I don't want to name whosoever, they can just pass on my information. So this is the way and the system is not checking who is coming here, because if even the international students who are coming here, they don't have any clearance with the PCC. Even I had mentioned last year to the government also that please make it mandatory that whosoever comes to Canada should have a mandatory police clearance certificate from their own countries. So it is dangerous. Like we have heard some news that some international students have been indulged in some gunfires. Who knows? Because they might not have the security clearance from their home country.
And so you're concerned about gang violence in the India diaspora here in Canada.
Yes.
Yes. And this is the extent to which the influence from India is present here, and it affects you because some of these people that you think or view as being a threat or a possible threat to your safety, these people are here. They're connected to this judge back in India. The threat is present here because of that, and you're not alone, is what you're saying. These problems related to gang violence in Canada, even though it starts with a very minor incident, they become political. They're probably cultural, driven by culture to some degree, or conflicts in culture, or just by these incidents themselves, where now you're being targeted by someone with great power and influence over in India. And even though you live here, because we have such a large Indian diaspora and we have problems with Indian gangs, and these problems from India have essentially been imported into Canada, and now you're dealing with the same thing. So you've approached the authorities here in Canada with these concerns, and what happened when you did that?
Yeah, first thing I will clarify that I'm not saying that the judge is having some connections directly with the threats in Canada. I say anybody can have connections. And because this matter, the people are very influential, I am making complaints against the police also. So they are
which police in Canada or in India?
No, against the local police in Delhi police.
Right.
So I'm afraid that there are millions of people of Indian origin. So I'm afraid that if my identity and address is disclosed, I can be and I cannot be on the radar because of the prevailing dangerous situations in many cities across the Canada where some people from the India are involved who may be on the.
And so tell me about that violence, the gang violence within the India diaspora here in Canada that you're seeing, not just related to yourself, but to the Indian community and the communities that you live in general. How much of an issue is it for, the people in your community?
First thing is here, I have seen that unfortunately there have been incidents which are being captured, that there have been protests and, sort of violent protests, I won't say, but there are protests where the two communities like Hindus and the Sikhs, they are against each other, although they belong to the same country. And then we have seen that even in the Brampton and in the Surrey, there are some people who have come and that fired indiscriminately outside someone's home. There have been extortion calls and there have been no help received. And some house was also set on some fire. I don't know for what reason. I read in the newspapers.
Yeah.
It all is because there is no system who is coming to this country.
Yeah.
There is no system because when somebody is coming on an international study permit, he's making it clear that he is going to study here. But once he lands here, there are thousands of cases who have said that we have come here for seeking asylum. So this is the abuse of system, and those people have not got the clearance of the local police. Who they are, whether they belong to some gang, whether they belong to some organization, you never know. Anybody can say that I have taken admission as an international student. He arrives at the com and then he says he will not attend the college, he will seek asylum. Asylum is for some people who are genuinely persecuted, like the case where some authorities, a police, or there's a threat on someone due to some race, religion, his political association, whatever.
And so this comes back to the Khalistan issue in part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where we're seeing a lot of the conflict is the Khalistan side versus the pro-India government side. It's an issue of separation, which Canada is going through, or just going through the early parts of this kind of dispute. And you see how it can escalate out of control for sure, right? And so it just gets crazy after a while. Let's see here. Let's bring in another guest here because I said we're going to go to the phones. There's Angie. Hello, Angie Clowley from out in BC. And I know, and the reason I asked Angie to join us tonight is because you live out in BC. I do want to let our guest kind of finish his story, but we definitely want to get to what you have to say too, because you have experience with immigrants and I'll let you tell the story, but you have a large Indian diaspora out there in BC as well, and gang violence that I know you're aware of too. So you can bring some value to this conversation, but back to our guest first so we can finish up here. Where were we? Oh yeah, we're back to the Khalistan protests, and some of those have become violent. And just to highlight again, this all stems back to the Air India bombing, over 300 Canadians killed in that, which I think a lot of Canadians have either forgotten about it or maybe were never aware, because you know how Canadians are, they just don't pay a lot of attention to a lot of things. But that all relates to this. Then we have Justin Trudeau, who is seen by the Indian government as having been protecting Khalistani separatists, viewed by the Indian government as terrorists. There was that incident where Trudeau flew over to India, and then he had that mechanical malfunction mysteriously with his plane, and he had to have a layover. It was my view that they were concerned about allowing the government of India to repair the plane, so they flew parts in, I believe, from Canada rather than let them work on that plane, because you know where that might have gone if he was correct about maybe his paranoia. I won't say any more about that, but there was that incident. And then, so what you really have here is the Liberals have been allowing the Khalistani separatists to come in. They set up residence here. They're given Canadian citizenship. They use that as a shield. So they have dual citizenship here in Canada, Indian and Canadian. Where the government of India really can't touch them because they're on Canadian soil, protected by Canadian authorities, protected by the Canadian government, and yet they still continue their separatist political activities from afar, reaching back out into India in order to fuel, and even some of the leaders of the Khalistani movement living in Canada, which the government of India is alleged to have responded to by becoming involved in the hiring of hitmen to go out and perpetrate these assassinations on Canadian soil, which the government of Canada then called out and said, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that to a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. And that's a violation of our sovereignty. And that became a very, very heated and hot and a big sticking point between the Liberal government of Canada and the government of India. The Liberal government continues to farm for votes, allegedly, among the Khalistani communities, and also trying to pick up votes on the other side of the equation too. But the other people are not separatists. They're more supportive of the government. And the conservatives are farming for votes with those folks. So you really have this political divide, not only within the Indian diaspora, but also right within the Canadian political parties, with the conservatives supporting the pro-government side, the liberals supporting the Khalistani side. Then you see that explains why the conservative influencers are all pro, like anti-Khalistani, and you see, the politicians at all of these events, soliciting votes. And that's why the Khalistanis finally ejected, I believe they banned Pierre Poilievre finally from some of their places of worship, even after he'd been in there trying to get their votes. And it's because he's supporting the government of India. The liberals are supporting the separatists. Why would that be? It's because the government of India under Modi is more of a nationalist, right-wing political power. The Khalistanis are more progressive and more on the liberal or socialist side of the political spectrum and advocate for minority rights and things of that nature. So they're a thorn in the side of this right-wing pro-MAGA conservative government that is part of the global rise of the right, which is why Trump then supports the government of Modi. And that's another reason he is at odds with Justin Trudeau and the liberals, and now Mark Carney, because they continue to support the Khalistanis that are viewed as terrorists by Modi over in are you following me, folks? The Khalistanis are viewed as terrorists, which Trump then and MAGA and his administration say, yes, these people are terrorists. And why is the Canadian government harboring terrorists? And that's where all of this, you got to shut that, like, secure your border, Canada. So that's part of that whole equation and argument, which is now playing out as part of the 51st state rhetoric, why they want to take over Canada, because we've got this commie government in Ottawa that's clearly supporting Khalistani terrorists as part of their communist agenda, as so put. And so Canada suffering on the diplomatic front with the United States because of the liberals' support for Khalistani separatists, on a political footing in order to farm votes while the conservatives play the other side of the aisle. All of the politicians up here, meanwhile, really just portraying themselves as being tolerant and welcoming to all new Canadians. And don't you dare say anything negative about this particular group of new Canadians, because if you do, you're just a racist. Meanwhile, they're playing heavy politics and they are farming votes, and they're appealing to one degree or another to both sides of the equation. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're making deals in the back rooms, cultivating all kinds of political donations, and in exchange they're returning favors, which I have no doubt then translate into, you can bring more of your relatives over from India, or you can bring more of your relatives in from India, or we're going to help you get rid of all those people who you think are terrorists, or we're going to get rid of those people because they're oppressive to you as a minority group, and they're playing Indian politics on Canadian soil to get elected and seize power back in Ottawa, either for the conservatives or the liberals. Has anybody made any sense of what I just said?
Yeah, it's super confusing, because then also, if you remember, with our own last federal election, it got brought up too, because Jagmeet Singh was denied a visa into India because he looks like, shall I say, a terrorist to that country because of that. So that is where my head went at too, is when you were talking about that, because that was a big ordeal, especially with conservatives, noting that how can India call someone a terrorist, and he's running a leader of the political party in Canada. And so if that just doesn't muddy the water even worse, I don't know what does. Sorry, I'm not helping your cause here. I'm just
no, you are. You're helping a lot, because what it comes down to is, if you're just a stupid little ignorant white boy like me from the backwoods of Ontario, right? It's a stretch to try and understand the politics of another country on the other side of the globe when those politics even come here and are staring you straight in the face. And like, until I learned about it, I was like, I don't know what this is about. These people are all crazy. They're just a bunch. They're just fighting. And then the politicians are like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just don't criticize anybody, or you're a racist, right?" And you're like, "Yeah, well, we love all you guys. Can you please stop fighting?" That's where we're at. Meanwhile, to the people out fighting in the streets, this is a very serious matter. But it is the politics of India here on Canadian soil, and we don't like it, right? We just want everybody to calm down. And now our guest here tonight kind of blowing the whistle on all this, saying, look, man, this is really serious. Our community, our Indian community where we live, we don't feel safe because the politics is so thick and this conflict is present here. And when we go to the Canadian authorities here now and to our politicians, they're not helping us solve the problem. We've got a big problem. We've got gangs, we've got political violence, we've got political assassinations here. We don't feel safe. My family doesn't feel safe. The vast majority of us here, we just want to live in a safe community. Meanwhile, we've got all these thugs and political activists and political operatives and assassins running around, and we want something done about it. And the Canadian authorities are kind of like, I think largely, probably, especially at the local and regional level, they don't really understand what the hell it's about. And the government's not helping because you've got the two main political rivals, the Conservatives and the Liberals, just fighting for votes and playing politics and picking sides while they're pretending that they just love all people from India, or just saying that, which may well be true, but they're picking sides. And because they're picking sides politically and farming votes, that in itself is fueling things, because now each side feels like there's a two-tier justice system. That group's getting special treatment from the cops because the Liberals are in power, or those guys are getting special treatment because now the Conservatives are in power. You see, so Canadian politics gets overlaid onto it. It adds another layer of craziness. And then you add the tertiary issues of the United States and the 51st state stuff, and Trump and his administration saying, you weirdos up there in Canada, all you commies, all you liberals, we don't like all those Khalistani separatists. They're a bunch of terrorists. What about that Air India bombing? Do something about that. You got to shut all that stuff down, deport all those people, because that's kind of where they're at with everything anyway. And I'll throw it back to my guest. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Right.
I think
not bad for a little white boy from the backwoods, eh?
Politics doesn't stop at the border, right? So no matter with us, if I'm going to Mexico or to the United States, or if I'm traveling abroad, and also too, when we have immigrants come into Canada, they bring their own political beliefs. So they are going to side with, we have three parties here. We have more than that, but, and I think we can't, it's really interesting because it's kind of dancing on a fine line, because we want them to be passionate. We want them to bring their interests, their culture, because I do believe it increases and helps us. And I like, my gosh, I love Indian food. I love Chinese food. Like, what kind of food don't I love? I guess. But also too, with all that, everyone comes from a place. And if you are political, especially if you're leaving because there is violence, or if you are coming to create a better life for your family, obviously you're going to have religious and political beliefs and cultural differences. And, on one hand, I can say that has helped me in my world, in my life. But I also know that there are people that are racist, that don't like, people who wear turbans, or who don't like that, someone of a different skin color. That is just the reality. I don't love that. I have been the only white person in my house probably for 16 years. There's been a couple others, but the majority, I have been the minority Caucasian in my house. And I've chosen that. I've had international students for 16 years, and I've had, I think about 5 from India. I've had numerous from Japan, China, Taiwan, Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, like you name it. Yeah. So, and for me, if you don't get the ability to go travel abroad, if you can bring all those cultures in here, at one time we had 5 different religions around my table at night. And I think that's the kind of thing we need to do is, you know, they say build a longer table, don't build a wall. But it, like I said, that politics and religion and culture do not stop at the border when someone comes in here, and we have to be conscious of what kind of person we do bring into Canada. And we can't say with the mass immigration they have failed us. I think everyone can agree that it has failed, you know, a certain, I don't know what the percentage is, but without doing proper back checks. And, you know, I was super confident for a long time. Anyone that came into my home had a credit check, a background check to leave, you know, their home country. And then you find out, I think it was about 8 years ago, that actually isn't the case, that they weren't doing a lot of the checks. I can speak to on 2 different sides of how fraud does happen with immigration. Well, I had worked at a private college for about 1.5 years, and we focused on English as a second language. And I'll never forget when a young guy came in, he had 2, you know, men from India with him, originally from India. Now they lived in Vancouver, bringing him there. And the kid that was standing in front of me, he wasn't the kid that I had in the passport. And he was sitting there, and I did not know what to do. And so I called our MP's office at the time and spoke to a lovely gal there and said, I don't know what to do. Like, this is not the kid. I can guarantee you this is not the same kid. And by the time I got off the phone from talking to them, they were long gone. So that individual got into Canada, got on someone else's passport and their visa, and then was never seen again. So where is that individual? At the same time, when I was talking to the MP's office, they had someone with a fraudulent worker's visa at that time. So they were coming over. I believe they were working on a farm, and they found that it was a fraudulent piece of paper. And it's like the new birth certificates. They're quite large, these visas. They look kind of like our Canadian money. And it was a fraud. And how it got past, you know, immigration, it must have had the correct numbers or something. And then they found it was fraudulent on this side of the border when the person was already here. And he went through all of the correct steps, but that immigration recruiter obviously was a fraud. And there was a number of that came out in the wash after. There was another public college that actually had to shut their courses down, I believe, for 3 days about 7 or 8 years ago, because what happened is so many students came in that could not speak English. And so what happens is, if you have an IELTS test, so that's the test to check how well your English is, we had to have a 7.5, I believe, to take any of our courses. And so what the BC government did is they pushed it up to, I believe it was 9 or 10, because what was happening as people were coming in, they were doing one of 2 things. They would get someone else to take the test for them. So it wasn't them taking the test, or they were just recording and memorizing exactly what the answers were, because I think there were only 6 tests at that time. And so they would fraudulently get into Canada, and all of a sudden, to take business, to take culinary arts, to take marketing, or whatever the course is, you need to be fluent in English. You need to be able to understand it, write it, and, you know, be fluent in English. What happened is they had an influx of all of these students that could not speak English, and they shut the college down for 3 days to figure out how to deal with it, because all of a sudden your numbers are wrong. You now have mass numbers for ESL, because all of these folks cannot speak English or understand it. And now you have all of these courses that don't have enough people in them to take them. And obviously the ESL courses is less investment than your business course or your culinary arts course or whatnot, right? So it was a huge challenge. And that's when we had, I was a house parent for a number of years, and that's when it switched. We no longer were house parents that, got introduced through the college to have students live at the house. That program, ran its course right after that because they no longer had international students. They totally shifted and changed from certain countries that were more fraudulent than others. And so then I just rented rooms to individuals instead of being like a house parent teaching them English and whatnot. So
let's go back. We've got Deanne joining us now too, but let's go back to our guest. So just back to you, Pawan. Did I miss anything? Was I on track there? Was I accurate in what I was saying? And do you want to add to anything that I said?
Yes, Rick. I just wanted to come to that point, your opening remarks that the trend which has been released by this IRB, Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, that the asylum system has experienced a substantial increase in the asylum or refugee claims in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And the Indian nationals now are forming the largest single group of these asylum claimants.
Yeah.
So I was going through the data that even as on March 2025, there were about 39,000 asylum claims from Indian nationals which are pending before the IRB, which is the largest from a single country.
Mm-hmm.
So not all the people are the bogus claimants, not all the people are genuine claimants. What I want to say, the people who are genuine, like who are feeling persecution because of the typical example of my case, although I never sought asylum, I was a permanent resident. But in that case, like where people feel that it is not due to the economic reasons only, but because they feel powerless against the system.
Okay, so let me just pause there for a moment, because I know the Canadian government has been increasing the level of scrutiny that they are applying to these asylum applications, because there is also rampant fraud. I'm aware of that. The government's aware of it. They are addressing it. That's what Jason Kenney has been calling out, saying that the federal government has been rubber stamping too many of these asylum applications. So they are cracking down on that stuff. And I have to say, the story that you're sharing with us tonight about the dog defecation, the threats, and so on. I mean, those in itself, in my view, depending on the level of the threat and where it's coming from, may not rise to the level that would warrant an asylum application being approved, because normally you're seeking asylum based on political persecution or the possibility of being murdered for political reasons or something along those lines, because the government is oppressing you. And so again, I don't really know the nature of the threats in your particular case, but in your case too, it's you're not seeking asylum. You're just highlighting that particular issue, maybe to just highlight how corruption or a degree of rot within the political and public service in India itself can lead to these kinds of conflicts, disputes, and threats leveled against you. What level of threat was leveled at you? Were you like, did they threaten your life?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're threatening someone by a sort of illegal detention or restraining someone, or you're threatening right outside when somebody is there for testimony before the court, and if you're threatening to settle, otherwise you can be in a scenario to be hit by a car when you go out of the court, and then you can't blame them. So these all things are basically very serious, and particularly when the police is not.
So what was the purpose for you of highlighting your personal experience with these kinds of threats? So why bring that up in this discussion about immigration tonight? Why did you want to do that here?
Because I wanted to, because like I said, there are so many asylum seekers, particularly from the India. So the government they have to see the realities, that what are these asylums are based upon, whether they have some documents to substantiate their claim, or whether somebody is coming on a study permit and having taken admission in a college, and right at the airport he is saying that I want to take asylum. So this is the abuse of the asylum system. In that way, the genuine people who are oppressed, they cannot claim the asylum, and people who are already determined that they're coming here supposedly for driving a truck, they know what's the best way to drive a truck. Let's first of all go and apply for a study permit. apply for the study permit, come at the airport and say, I'm not going to the college, I want to, then the CBSE officials may tell you, okay, fill up the form and file your claim. Then and there they should say, if you are on a study permit, you don't have any persecution at your country. You're coming and declaring that you're coming for study, then how can you suddenly change while you're traveling that you are persecuted?
Yeah, but why tell your story here tonight? You're not applying for asylum.
Yeah.
So why is your story relevant? Why does it matter?
My story was that the Canadian government should provide some support to the people. I'm Canadian now. That they should feel safe here. If you are bringing such people here from those countries who are not verified, who are coming for a category visa, and they are going for some other purpose like asylum, you never know who these people are. And
you're calling on the federal government to ramp up the scrutiny, to check people more thoroughly before allowing them to come in to the country, because you think they are letting people in who are unsafe and are threatening the safety of your community.
Absolutely. If you have left a country where you were born due to some persecution or some these things, and if you will allow the people from that country or some other country unchecked based on any background checks, then you are not feeling safe in Canada also. And other plea was there that the Canadian government, like the way the USA government is helping, the UK government is helping, I have seen that Canadian government is not helping the people when they are in disarray. They should help the Canadians, first of all, that they should feel safe in their community in Canada. And other thing is there, even while visiting abroad, they should provide some sort of consular service, meaningful consular services. They shouldn't leave the Canadians at their own, like the way they are leaving Canadians here, that, okay, you take about your own security arrangements. This is not the way the government should run.
Okay, so you're kind of in alignment with Jason Kenney when he's saying the federal government has been rubber stamping far too many of these applications, just pushing them through and not checking them closely enough.
Absolutely. The Canadian needs to be providing assistance abroad, while if he's having some trouble or some threats, the Canadian government cannot, just shrug off, okay, it's not our matter. All the governments across the world are helping their citizens. But why our government is not helping?
Okay. And Ian, welcome, sir, from Montreal. I know that in Quebec, you have had accommodations up there with regard to immigration, so that you don't have as many immigrants coming into Quebec because you're concerned, or your government is concerned about preserving French culture and the language. So that's what Danielle Smith is looking for. That's why they're having this referendum on October 19th, in part to ask questions of the citizenry to determine if maybe legislation similar to what you have in Quebec should be applied out in Alberta. And do you have any thoughts on any of this so far?
Well, what I see here is like misrepresentation of the authority towards rights of people to a certain degree. And probably I think we should look into that later. But yeah, since 1991 in Quebec, we have the Canada-Quebec Accord on immigration that was signed, which on February 5th. So basically, it's about the culture of Quebec and Canadian in general, which we just have a certain threshold of people that comes in to a certain degree. So that's how it works. And I think that, Alberta premiers, Ms. Smith, want to look into that, basically to have, the same kind of rights. So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work on her favor or not. So, yeah.
All right. And back to our guest, Pawan, is there any other aspect to this story that we haven't touched on that you want to highlight tonight? So are you still there? Maybe he stepped away. Angie, I'll throw it to you, because you've had, as I said, experience with the immigration. Oh, we lost Angie. Where did Angie go? Everybody's bailing, jumping ship. We are going to start to take phone calls momentarily at 1-647-734-4220. When prompted by the system, punch in that PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the number sign or hashtag, and I will let you into the conversation here. I'll admit you. And there she is. She's back. We lost you there for a moment. Did you have anything else that maybe you'd like to add?
I was just going to say, in regards to our guest, and so it's my understanding, as I worked with numerous students that were coming from India, that there is a large population of the recruiters that do bring students to Canada that are fraudulent. As I was saying, they would either, go so far as to fake, have someone impersonate someone's ID. But my understanding is the police system is corrupt there as well in some of the states. And so what would happen? So say, for example, that student that left and was never to be seen again, it was not the right student that was on, that signed up for school, nor the passport. But what happened is, so the school expects a certain amount of money, and due to the owner of the private college that I worked with, he would call the recruiter and they would go and make sure that kid paid on the other end. So what would happen is they would have people in India that would go out and go to this kid's home, the actual kid who never did come to Canada nor attend school, and they would demand payment because obviously that student left. So the college courses were $15,000. And so now they would go and they would start to collect money. And so there's a whole fraudulent, immigration thing with students, specifically with ESL and with other courses. And then the other side of things is it's not just that one student that is putting money towards an education, it's that whole entire village. Yeah. So what would happen is it's not just one family paying. Numerous people from the smaller villages would pay in with the whole hopes and dreams of bringing other people over to Canada as well. Now, this is going back nearly a decade ago, and I hope that things have improved, but
not much, because as you see from this story right here from Reuters, this is November 6th of last year, so just not long ago, just months ago. They're saying 74% of all student study permits from India have been rejected over the past year. And that's thousands and thousands, because these are coming in and they're finding that they are fraudulent. So even though Jason Kenney and conservatives are accusing the federal government of rubber stamping things, it seems that they are cracking down considerably, rejecting about 84% of Indian applications for permits to study at Canadian post-secondary institutions in August, the most recent month available, were rejected, compared to about 32% in August of 2023. That's according to Immigration Department data. And so you can see that they are absolutely cracking down. And that is because you have some fraudulent, illegal consulting, immigration consulting firms that have popped up. And like I said, and we've highlighted this on the program, sometimes they're posting videos to attract people from India, to convince people from India to enter into, like, to bring them in, and promising them, we can get you into Canada. And these videos paint this rosy picture where you're going to get all these social handouts, all this free money and free food. You'll be taken care of. You just come to Canada. Everything's basically paid for. And then I've seen people who are in that camp where it's like, just deport them all. They repost that stuff. And that gets people here who are taxpayers upset, really angry, because they believe that that level of support is being offered when it's not actually accurate. And the people who are believing it on this, like Indians from India, like when they're seeing this stuff, they're getting scammed and they're getting ripped off by thousands of dollars, and now being rejected, thrown back, pushed back out of the country. So we're all losing in the end because of all this crap that's going on. Is our guest back? Are you there, Pawan?
Yes.
Okay, there you are. So I'll put it back to you. Was there anything else that you wanted to highlight?
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. That's it.
Okay, so stick around, because what we're going to do now is, like, don't go away, Pawan. Okay, because I am going to go to the phones. So we'll see if we get any phone calls. The number's scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Let's take a little break. We'll continue the conversation regardless of what happens with the phone in portion, because we've got a great panel going on right now. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity, the Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. It custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations. Proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Exercise your right to free speech. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you. Okay, let's get back to it. Bring our guests back in. And there's everybody. Okay, so Angie, you were just saying that maybe we should be discussing or talking about the differences in laws between Canada and India.
Yeah, just Canada has more stricter laws on fraud, on, copyrights, on a number of things, even personal rights and responsibilities. And so as I understand it, when I was working for the private college, if some of the students did not pay their tuition, what would happen is that recruiter would then send someone to their house, and how it was described to us, it was a mob, like a part of a mob that would go and try to collect from this individual in the village. And if that student was still there because they sent someone else and, on a fraudulent visa, or the student was now working in Canada, they still would go to their house and kind of, shake the family trying to get money back. And I think that just shows different laws between what can happen in Canada. Granted, they're like, as I say this, the mayor of Surrey is asking for help because there's so much extortion going on in Surrey. So
Right.
as I say, we have stronger, better laws. Maybe we don't.
In fact, isn't the mayor of Surrey, didn't the mayor come right out and say that a national emergency or something should be declared because of it?
State of emergency.
State of emergency,
because
yeah.
there's so much extortion going on.
A state of emergency in the community, not nationally, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so like that's concerning as well. And so, as I sit here and say, yeah, but our laws are different. Well, are they though? Because if this kind of behavior is coming onto our soil, I don't want to sound like an extreme woke rightist, but we should be able to stop some of that. Like, and go back, like this is a poor example because I have a lot of great friends from India and I value and appreciate them all, but the honor killings and those kind of things that were brought and done on Canadian soil. Even we had some other challenges. There was because I believe she was a pharmacy tech in Vernon, so in the Okanagan Valley, she left her husband, and in their culture, that is disgraceful to leave, and her former partner, shot her, and I think there were 7 that passed away in total. This is going back a number of years ago. It's the Geckel family slaughter that happened in Vernon, and so that is just another showing of, when you disrespect your family.
Here's the story, actually. Surrey mayor calls for national state of emergency amid extortion crisis. Mayor Brenda Locke urging the federal government to take full leadership and declare a national, not just a local, national state of emergency, so my mind wasn't playing tricks on me, or invoke equivalent extraordinary measures to tackle the extortion crisis affecting communities across Ontario. Pawan, help me out here. This must be something you're aware of. I think you live in Ontario, right? So is this a concern in your community and in your circle of acquaintances and friends and family?
Yeah, I've heard in the surrounding communities and from the friends also.
Also, your audio just suddenly went hollow. So
okay.
You're maybe not on the microphone.
Yeah, I said, yes, I have heard it from the friends and communities around. And I also heard that the federal government has designated an organization which was behind these extortions as a terrorist organization in Canada. That is a welcome step. But however, the thing is, there still, there should be some on-the-spot checking, like the way the US is doing. There are no checkings on the roads. If you go onto the highway and check at random check some truck drivers, you may find that there may be some people who are driving the truck who may not have the work permit or the license, but they may be working in cash or whatsoever. So there is no such at random checkings have been reported in the trucking industry. There were some scams come out that they get the licenses for the truck so easily. So this was also some sort of sham. There are no checks that at some employers, like in the factories or the farmhouses or some the Tim Hortons, that whether all the people are working legitimately there. Because if 30,000 people or 300,000 people, I don't know the exact number, are missing after their visas have expired, where are those people? I mean, how they are surviving. Definitely they are surviving on the cash market. Who is employing them? There are no checking, there are no penalties. So this is all. And one particular concern is there that if I have heard some subsidies, which may be true or not, I don't know. If a federal government or any government tries to incentivize the employers, specifically for hiring some foreign workers or international students, if it is there, then it is it raises a very legitimate questions about the labor market fairness, because the public funds for which we pay taxes should not be given should not be to the disadvantage of the local Canadian workers, Canadian citizens, Canadian permanent residents. The policies should be carefully designed so that this imbalance should not be there. They should protect the Canadians first before giving incentivize and other things if they are. This is my concern.
So it's your view too, I guess, from the conversations I've had with you, like off, before coming on live, that you're actually concerned about the way the Canadian government handles immigration levels. I think, am I incorrect in saying that you think that there is too much immigration, there's too many people coming in, that it's putting too much pressure on social services, the housing market, resulting in rising housing prices because we need more supply to meet the demand? All of those kinds of issues, it needs to be better managed. Is that fair? Am I off base in what you think?
Absolutely fair. And I would like to add that this has created a chaos in the hospitals. This has created a chaos on the housing market. This has created chaos on the local streets. There was a time when we used to walk on the roads so freely. Now we cannot even drive. So many people are there, all around the people. Unsubstantiated growth of the people, like without any aim, without any policy, without any logic. And I'm sorry to say this, I am not against or pro against any party, but the Liberal government, they have no foresight what they are doing. I'm very sorry to say. They don't have where the people whose visas have expired have gone. They don't check anything on the Ontario streets. Even in the local small cities, there are so many, from one place to other place, there is so much time for commuting. There is pedestrians are not safe on the road. Canadian students are not getting jobs. Canadian youth are not getting jobs. This is all going on all over the chaos, all over the country.
See, and I think what you're saying would probably surprise some people who would expect you to say, "Oh no, we need more immigration, as much as we can get. Bring them all in." I think that's what people would expect you to say, but you're as a Canadian now, as a permanent resident, you're concerned about letting too many people in too, because you want it. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but am I correct in saying that you think that you just want to make sure that the numbers are kept to reasonable levels so that we can provide proper support for the people coming in, and so that the people who already live here don't face distortions and too much disruption in the economy and in social services? And I know that you have kids and you want to make sure that they have access to good education, to proper health care, to the kinds of community supports, and that they're living in a safe community. So you're just concerned about the numbers again. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. And my whole family is Canadian citizen. I am living over a decade here.
Yeah.
My concern is there when I immigrated because I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
On a landed, having on my own. I brought my own funds, and my wife was working. So we didn't relied upon the Canadian resources. We contributed. The Canadian immigration should revolve around the economic immigration. We need some doctors. We need nurses here. We need mechanics. We need electricians here. Why are you calling the skilled category? Skilled category means skilled category doesn't mean that you are involving people on asylum. You're involving people for international study permits. No, we need people where we have a real shortage. Where is the shortage? Shortage is in technicalities. We don't have mining engineers. We don't have construction workers. Look, our work stops in the winter because some workers don't work. We don't have electricians. We don't have plumbers. We are scarcity of the other so much needed stuff. But what we are bringing here is without any policy, without any thinking, without any logic. We are just bringing the graduates, postgraduates, doctors, postgraduate. We need technical people. We need people who may be having a grade 12 education, but they have the license. They can provide us a plumbing services so that Canadians can afford. They can provide us electrician services so that we can afford. They can build our roads. They can build the bridges. They can build the tunnels. This is the construction workers we need it. We don't need a bunch of lakhs of asylum seekers who come here right from the day one. We put them on the hotels and we pay them the monthly bills. They say, I don't eat vegetarian. I take the chicken. I take this item. This is not a charity. This is not a party going on. So please bring on those people or deport them. Why? When they come here and declare, I have come for asylum seeker, but I'm a student, deport them.
And,
why are they
is this division and the disruptions being caused by the federal government's immigration policies, is that creating more racism? And what has been your experience with that? Are you having negative experiences with it?
Absolutely. Ever since I say I'm apolitical, but as an alarm person, I think ever since this Liberal government of the Justin Trudeau came, this level has gone almost double. Earlier, when we used to come, it was around 200,000 people every year. That was sustainable level. The people used to accommodate here and there, and everybody was feeling good. Schools were not overly accommodated. Now you see in the schools, there are so many porta cabins. In one class, there are 40 students. This is not the way, because my children are grown up. They are now in schools now. I am not concerned with the school, but as a Canadian, I'm concerned. Even their children have to go to the school. You can't have 40, 45 students, and sometimes the classes are merged. You have 4th and 5th in Toronto in the same class. You have 5th grade and 6th grade in the same grade. What kind of education you are leading to our own Canadians just for the sake of your own vested political interest? Just bring out the immigration level to 500,000 level and then pay half of them, the Canadian taxpayers' money for years and years on coaching, on English speaking, on this and that, and so many not-for-profits. For me, I'm sorry to say, for me, this non-for-profits, it seems to be a sham. It's nothing, just a sham, just to allocate funds for immigrations and all that. Nothing. We need economic immigrations. We are educated people. I'm a nurse. I'm a doctor. I'm a construction worker. Okay, this is my skills, my experience. I will come. I will get a job. That's it. We don't need other scams.
Yeah. Angie,
I was going to bring up another situation. So if you remember in 2018, Saudi Arabia and Canada had a tiff, and they ordered all of the Saudis out of Canada. I believe I had one. Did I have two? I had one student from Saudi. He did not want to leave. But the interesting thing was that I think there was about 1,000 student doctors that were training in Canada from Saudi. And so when they got removed, all of a sudden we were missing all of these kind of junior position doctors. And one thing that happened in that scenario is we recognized that Canada is happily taking all of this money to train all the doctors from Saudi. But what happens is those doctors don't stay in Canada. So we are using really important positions in our medical education system, and those doctors are not staying in Canada. So, that was a big stretch as well. And I don't believe that's actually balanced out. But I think after that, Canada started to recognize that maybe we should be opening more spaces for Canadian doctors. And not to say that we don't need international doctors. I myself have a doctor from South Africa. But I think that was a big eye-opener for us to see how reliant we are to have these doctors come here, get educated, and then they leave, and we're still without doctors. So, and I think your guest said that very poignantly, that we should be stricter on who comes here. And and this is a whole thing, like, do I like what ICE is going on and doing in the United States? It's extremely scary. It's it's volatile, it's challenging, it's brought up the worst part of both parties, in my opinion. But it says here in Canada, we have possibly up to 1 million people who are currently in Canada that should not be here. They do not have a permanent resident card. They don't have a visitor's visa. They don't have a student visa, and their visas have run out. And I know I've worked with people who've had their visa run out for one reason or another, and I've also seen where someone from Mexico, for example, was explained to claim asylum, like from Mexico, and now they're in a spot where their visa has lapsed, and they have a child in Mexico. They're trying to get back. So there's all of these holes in our system. And I don't know what the correct course of action is, but if we have 1 million people in Canada that shouldn't be here, by no means do I want an ICE organization in Canada, but we do need something that's going around checking whether people should be here or not. And, if someone's here under, a fake visa or a fraudulent way into Canada, I do believe they should be, held accountable and go through the proper channels.
Well, you touch on something that I think is just fundamental and very simple. And in my view, the answer to a lot of these problems, the answers are really just this simple. All you need to do is just enforce the laws and apply the laws equally to everyone, which is what the justice system is supposed to do. So if you are in the country illegally, then you just simply say, sorry, you have to get on a plane and go home.
But I think the point is how would we find them? I remember being in grade 11 or 12. I had a friend that came over from Hong Kong. He was working at the family Chinese restaurant, and immigration showed up there because he was not allowed to work because he was only there on a student visa for high school. And it was a big ordeal because his responsibility to live at their house, he had to cook in the kitchen, right? And so they saw that as taking jobs away from someone else, and he almost got booted out of the country. But I think we also have to hold the employers accountable. But as I say this, I've had 2 students from India in my home where I have went and dealt with their management at their employers because they were promising these kids that they were going to give them a PR card. And I'm like, you can't give a PR card. That's not how it works. So students come over and it's done on a point system. So you go to school for business. It's an expectation that once you graduate your program, that you're going to go and get a job at a bank or, some sort of job that reflects the education you've got here. And the crazy thing is if you're an engineer in India, you can't be an engineer in Canada. You have to take a totally different course, to become a PR Canadian citizen. But I think it's such a challenge for these people to come over to have to reroute their education and take a new program as well. So I do think we have to hold the employers accountable. And when these folks are promising PR cards and when they're saying we can help you or and also too, this is, I hate to say this, but numerous people use and abuse the programs. Numerous people use and abuse people that they pay cash to as well. We see that often when the immigration farmers come in, for the summer. We've had them over the past, I can't say it's happened recently, but there's been 2 big stories in the Okanagan, I'd say over the past maybe 8 years, where when it's dang near 40 degrees outside and they're all outside in tents, that they had to bring in trailers and proper showers and stuff because they were keeping them in tents. So, do we need immigration? Absolutely.
You're telling me that the migrant farm workers are living in tents?
They were. And so
I do not see that around here. This is a farming community
now, but previously it was. And so we also have many people, we also have many people from Quebec that would come and do orchard work that would live in tents. And so, or a van, or, I've had 2 people from France actually live with me as well, who just came through that were here for, the fruit picking season. But that's what happened a number of years ago where they mandated they had to have ATCO trailers for them to stay in because the systems and where they were staying were horrendous.
See, around here, all the farmers have housing. They bring people in from Jamaica, Mexico, Central America. And there are programs in place, right? And a lot of these people come here, stay for quite a long time, then go home, then come back. They're,
year
after year coming back, and then they send a lot of their money back home because they're supporting their families, right? And they've honestly, They are doing work that the farmers can't get people who live here to do. That is the truth, and that has been the case for a very, 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 very long time. And that goes all the way back to pre-World War II and World War II, and that's where you see the persecution of people from who came here from Japan, who suffered because of discrimination. And you can go up here not very far from where I sit, up to Dresden, and I did a story about it a while back where those people were, they suffered because they wanted to put them into camps and things. They did during World War II, internment camps, because they were viewed as a threat. But a lot of those folks at the time were working as migrant farm workers, coming here, and that was the only work they could get when they first arrived here in the country, Japanese people. And now they're integrated right into the community. Many of them, their descendants, their families, they own businesses, they're very successful, and they worked their fingers to the bone only to suffer because of discrimination, prejudice during World War II, and because of fear at the time. And that's a giant problem. But it really, though, Angie, if you really want to locate someone who is here illegally, they have a lot of tools at their disposal, and it isn't really that difficult to track folks down, especially these days, because they all carry cell phones. You know where they're basically living, and they have a lot of tools at their disposal to track people down who are here improperly or illegally, who really should be sent back to their home countries, who have overstayed their time and are not here properly. So those issues can be addressed, but without doing what they're doing in the States. Because in my view, what's going on with ICE is not so much about deporting people. It's about a militia that has been unleashed into primarily Democrat states, and they put the weight of the law and behind these people, officers, these militias, and they've armed them so that they can go out into the streets and fight with Antifa. That's really what the hell that is all about, and that's why you've seen people shot.
Going after sanctuary cities specifically, yes. Right? And I think, and obviously we don't have that situation here, no. But I think it's still something that needs to be addressed. And when you were talking about how immigrants and seasonal farm workers, as they come over, one thing that I've noticed when I was young, 15, I had a full-time summer job. I actually worked up in the bush, and all of my friends worked. If you didn't work at a cattle farm, you worked at the gas station, you were a server at the restaurant, or maybe you babysat, but everyone worked. And what I found over the past specifically 10 years is parents didn't want to drive their kids around. And obviously I live in a medium-sized city now in the Okanagan, but parents don't want to drive their kids around. They don't want it to affect their summertime activities. So their kids don't work. And so I think that's a part of our problem too, is we're not encouraging the kids to work at a young age. I didn't know I had that option.
Yeah. Well, right? And it's my view too that, this is not a zero-sum game. The belief that all these jobs are being stolen, I don't buy that, because if someone's working and they're making money, they're spending that money in the community, that fuels the economy, that creates demand for other goods and services, and that expands the economy, that generates other demand in other areas, creates other jobs, which create other jobs, which create other jobs. There's velocity of money, there is economic linkages, and so those dollars get amplified in the communities and in a broader sense in expanded GDP. So it's not zero sum. And the arguments that you're stealing all the jobs, no, when people work in those jobs and they make money, taxes aside, just you're making money, you're spending the money as well. And that fuels the economy, creates more jobs. If someone's working, they're creating a job for somebody else. I have no issues with that so much. I do have issues with people business owners abusing programs, and then ultimately, in a way, they end up abusing the workers too. You see that on farms. You do see it with migrant farm workers, and just my view too, that the key to the whole thing is about just enforcing the law, making sure you protect everyone's rights in the process of enforcing the law by giving everyone their due process. And if a hearing in court is warranted, then they get their day in court. If it's just a matter of saying, hey, this visa has expired, it's time for you to go, you've been here too long, please go home, then that's what you do. But what you don't do is you don't go around just doing mass roundups of people, throwing them onto planes with no due process, not proper checks, catching some actual citizens in your net and deporting them to frickin' El Salvador, to another country where they're then in a prison where they can't get any representation from a lawyer. They don't have any recourse, no way to appeal anything.
Human rights.
That's right. You can't. That's not proper. That's what's going on in the States. That's why Canada has been different. That's why, or not always, but that's why we need to be different. We need to do it right so that we don't become the monster that we say that we're fighting.
Mm-hmm. I think also too, so when between the ages of, I would say 14 to 19, if I went to, a fast food place on the weekend, with my friends, we used to do Mainers, go in someone's car and drive up and down, then go get a cheeseburger and a pop and fries. Everyone that worked in there was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And so that's completely changed. And so I remember a couple years ago where every single fast food, every restaurant, every shop was begging for employees. I did see a help wanted sign when we were out today. But I think that's what's really changed is all of those jobs used to, and we also in BC specifically, we had a 2-tiered system. So anyone that was under, gosh, I can't remember what age, but they got a lesser wage. Also, there was a different wage for servers because of tips. And then you had like the adult wage, so to speak. So people, I'm not going to get these numbers right, but say 15 or under, you got a training wage, or 17 or under. And so we don't have that anymore with our NDP government. Minimum wage, I think, is $17.85 or something now, which, in my day, I don't think it was.
I think to some degree our perceptions are skewed a little bit, because I used to work at Wendy's when I was a kid, and I can tell you that when I was a kid, it was a mix. You had adults and kids, but the kids got the shifts after like 4 o'clock, after they got out of school. It was adults running the restaurant during the day, and then on weekends too, the kids picked up more shifts. So there was that kind of stuff. And we have a caller who has just joined us. Who's there?
Hi, Rick. It's Brian Howell. How are you?
Hey, Brian. How are you? Thanks for calling in.
Okay. I've been watching a lot of Olympics. Gold medal game tomorrow night.
Exciting.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, or tonight, or whenever it is.
So go ahead. What are you thinking?
Well, it's an interesting program tonight. I was just thinking in terms of the immigration issues. I remember I had a little story a couple of years ago that I wanted to do with you about immigration agencies, which is a little twist on tonight's topic.
Yep.
We all know how or why this mass market immigration is happening. So, a couple of years ago, I did, why it was happening, and I focused on one immigration agency out in Calgary. I think it's Calgary, the St. Albert suburbs. I think that's Calgary or Edmonton, through the Allison Jones Immigration Agency. And a lot of it was eye-opening. And as I looked at their website and did my research, a lot of them, like the executive director or the general manager or the administrative assistant, they're all white. So the ones who are gaining the most from immigration are these agencies, and they're proliferating. There were several thousand. So that's one reason why we're in a predicament that we're in right now.
Yeah, what you're saying is the agencies pick up fees. They make money off this, including government money in many cases. And so it becomes something that perpetuates itself. Is that fair? Is that, yeah.
Yeah, the a lot of the so-called immigration consultants, the starting salary is around $66,000 a year, and it's that's a nice income, and the immigrants are coming in from all over, India, Nigeria, Morocco, the Philippines.
Yeah, India being, I think, Pawan, I know you've looked at the numbers. Is India still one of the largest, or is it the largest source of immigrants coming to Canada right now? Are you there? Maybe he stepped away.
Yes, Rick, I can confirm you. India remains the largest source of immigrants, and even the asylum seekers at the moment. Second is about the immigration is China, but India remains the largest source of immigration in Canada, and in fact in many parts of the world.
Yeah. So, what else opened your eyes? Your camera is on there, Pawan. What else opened your eyes, Brian, or surprised you when you were looking into all of that?
Just the number of immigration agencies was somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000. One of the wonders of the internet, you could Google the yellow pages and look up immigration agencies in this or that city. 30 or 40 years ago, you'd have to get the phone book from Halifax or Toronto or Chatham, or it was a lot of intensive research, and just the quantity surprised me. Immigration agencies, there's 12 or 13 right here in Kingston. There's a few in Chatham where you live.
Well, I know that here in this community, as in many communities, they get government money to try to attract new residents, and that involves advertising, which is sometimes in the region or up into the Toronto area, where they're trying to pull people from those larger cities down into these smaller communities. And so you have government money chasing government money after all these programs to try to properly distribute the immigrants as they come in, and there's competition among communities to try to bring people to their communities. So it's a kind of a strange system when you really begin to look at it. It seems somewhat inefficient for the government to be throwing money at all these different municipalities, giving them all money to advertise to bring, the immigrants to their towns, because they're all drawing from the same pool. Why do you have to advertise at all? Isn't there a more efficient way to do it? But I kind of digress. Was there anything else with regard to your research in that area that might surprise people or concern us?
Just one thing I remember looking up on the Allison Jones Immigration Agency Facebook page 2 or 3 years ago. I know that they needed 167 heavy-duty auto mechanics to work on big rig trucks, and a lot of them were coming from offshore countries. Are there no white auto mechanics in Canada? They're using Twitter, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and a lot of, like the Allison Jones agency in particular. There was some that were on the payroll. A lot of immigration consultants were working on a commission. So the more people they bring in, I think they got somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 a person. So the objective was to bring in as many immigrants as they could so they can get a commission. But once they get here, that's another thing. And in the major cities, it's apparently become a problem where they become ghettoized. There's the Indian quarter, the Bangladesh quarter, the Somalia quarter, and it is concern.
Yeah, it's a concern. I can't speak to, you know, employment levels or when with regard to mechanics. I know that we train mechanics in the community colleges and in the apprenticeship programs here in Ontario. I don't know how that's impacted by immigration. I can't say.
Well,
I
can
do
tell
know,
you that-
actually. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
I can tell you that in Montreal, in construction site, there were a lot of investigation made along allegation of underpaid workers or people that is paid illegally or working under paper. So yeah, that's kind of a thing here too. So.
Yeah. And Angie, I mean, with regard to doctors, I know that in Ontario, for quite a long time, they've had various programs that are designed to keep doctors in the province after they graduate from medical school. They have a bunch of different programs. If you get loans or grants, you have to sign agreements to stay for a certain period of time. I think they call it return of service is the stipulation. And I remember covering news conferences like that even years ago. Many of these programs still remain in place. So you get like a minimum of, say, 5 years of service to if you take the government money, either as a loan or a grant, you have to stay in the province, agree to, and practice for about 5 years or whatever the current guidelines are, the terms of the agreement, right? So there are those sorts of provisions in place to address those issues. Also, I know there are things, I think there are incentives there or mandatory service in remote locations too, where the doctors have to go to like Northern Ontario to serve underserved communities for a certain number of years after they graduate. So, and they hope
There's
that they
bonuses
stay
as
afterward,
well.
right? What's that?
You get a northern living allowance, so it's called. It's a tax rebate that I actually got when I lived in Fort St. John. I know there's forgivable loans as well through the medical system, and yeah, there obviously are some incentives. I know that some people do rotations up in Nunavut and other areas for social work, for healthcare. But my point being with the Saudi doctors specifically is they were coming in using spots in our Canadian medical education system that if we are trying to train up more doctors, that it would be beneficial to have Canadian doctors because they're less likely to go on to elsewhere. And I know that the Canadian government for the past number of years has been trying to mirror up or link the qualifications for doctors because there's some doctors that can come in and do a test and, you know, work right away. I believe South Africa has a lot of the same educational, you know, markers that they need, criteria, but there's some countries that don't. I actually work with a fella who is educated in Africa and as well as Russia that doesn't qualify for our healthcare system here. And he is, you know, I believe he's in his 60s. So for him to go back and get educated is a bit much for him. And he has a large family. So there's those challenges as well. But I just hope that everyone's learned their lesson about, you know, the mass immigration and especially us for BC. I trust there's other areas as well. But as we have, you know, nicer weather, Vancouver, specifically Vancouver Island, we have a lot of people retiring in these areas. So our age, you know, median age has gone up and we don't have enough, you know, families coming in. We have schools in smaller rural areas that have closed. In my hometown, there was a school that closed just because they don't have the, you know, the population that they once did. And because the rural areas often are taken over by retirees, it's easier to buy a place there and to afford if, you know, especially people who have retired out of Vancouver, sell a house for, you know, $1.5 million or $2 million, come up here and, you know, buy a $600,000 condo or something. But I think it's really opened us all up, you know, from COVID, having a lot of people left the province due to not wanting to get the COVID shot. We had, I think it was 5,000 healthcare workers in BC, and the majority of them, my understanding, they were technicians. So ultrasound, radiation, MRIs, all of that. My understanding was the majority of it who refused to get the jab. And then I know many nurses and healthcare professionals that moved to Alberta, and they're getting more money and they can buy a house there now. So we unfortunately have lost a lot of them to Alberta. So who knows what will happen next.
Yeah. So Paul, what about your kids? How many kids do you have, and are they able to, I think they're probably in their teens or early 20s. What about, part-time jobs for them, and as they go to school and things like that? What has been their experience?
Oh, Rick, with the grace of God, my elder kid is well settled. He's he's a financial executive here in a multinational bank, and my younger son is pursuing the bachelor's in engineering here. He's in the third year, and he's also doing job because they have all been brought up at a very young age here. So they are with the grace of God doing very well here, very well. They belong to Canada, not to India. They're doing very well. And my wife is now just a homemaker, and I was also providing some professional services here. I won't disclose, but I was providing professional services here, helping community, and I also became the president of a not-for-profit corporation in Canada, helping community. And there were some other things which I did for the community here. And regarding the angel, I would like to, just for the knowledge of the viewers, the precise numbers of the physicians in Ontario is, as on 2023-2024, was 35,215 in Ontario. So that comes out to be roughly around 224 physicians per 100,000 people in Canada, which is very less. Although it is highest in Canada, Ontario has the highest physicians across the Canada, but still we have only 224 per 100,000 people. That's why I was saying we need more doctors.
Absolutely.
Actually, NG brought a good point. I mean, those Afghan people that were coming for a good education in the medical here could have probably been good doctors in our system, and I think we need them. That's the scary part. I mean, we throw some people with talent and away like this, I mean, to a certain degree. They don't really need a background check at this point. They're supposed to be contributing to our society to get better and to get healthy. So in that case,
if you have to incentivize the physicians, nurses, those who can provide help to the community, rather than incentivizing the people to defraud the system and take the asylum, this is the way the policy makers should decide. And that will be decided only when the Canadians will vote because they have to vote and come, and then only policies will be changed. Otherwise, it will remain as it is.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Well, I guess, I think we're kind of getting near the end of tonight's broadcast. So let's go around the clock and get some final thoughts from everyone. And I have to save Ian for last, because last night, we ran as Maverick Midnight Matinee for our watch party. We ran Little Caesar, the gangster movie. And remember last night I said when you were on here with me that I had to get you to do your French gangster imitation, like Edward G. Robinson in the movie. We didn't do that last night, so we're gonna get you. I need to get you to finish off tonight's broadcast with that. But why?
All right.
Why don't you go first there, Brian, and give us your final thoughts tonight? Are you ready?
Okay. In terms of the doctors, it's hard for a small town to get a general family doctor. It's Like I grew up in Morrisburg, and a few years ago, I was talking with one of the doctors who was on a hiring committee. It takes about 2 years. The starting salary was around $200,000 a year. It's difficult, really difficult. In terms of immigration, it's as I said, I focused only on immigration agencies, how it was being done, and not so much why. We kind of know why. A lot of immigrants came in through Trudeau, and further back, Harper and Chrétien. This has been an ongoing thing for years and years. And I just thought of something. Back in the mid '90s, there were only about 15 or 20 attacks on the Jewish community. Maybe a window pane broken at a Montreal business, for instance, or a Jewish cemetery partially vandalized. But the numbers now are like 1,000 per year. Why is this happening? It never used to happen before. There's an ugliness that's pervading Canadian culture. And immigration is maybe part of that. They're bringing their baggage and luggage with them.
Yeah, well, I think part of it, though, is what we touched on just very briefly. It's that because the immigration has not been managed well, it is putting stress on our social services, on our communities, on housing prices, on all of these things. It's been very disruptive. It has changed our communities rapidly. It scares people. And I think that ramps up reactions of racism and resentment. And that's, I think, something that needs to be pinned on the government, because they haven't addressed it properly and they've messed things up by doing just what I said. So I think that's a factor in it, and it brings all those negative things to the surface pretty darn quick when things start to turn bad.
Right.
I think there's a couple things with that too, is I think we were all groomed to be extremely political correct over the past number of years. And I think with Trump coming in and, when he showed up in 2015, that really shook everything. So we went from being respectful, politically correct, to going, wait, this is oppressing our freedom of expression, our voices and whatever. And so I think we're kind of switching back to that. So I think that's one thing. And, tolerance does need to be brought up in that. In regards to finances and money, I think that's a huge area. If we were doing good as a country, if we didn't have as much, if our dollar went further, because it just doesn't, I think that we would be more tolerant. That's just goes with it. I'm way happier when I got money saved and money coming in. That's just, and when I don't, I'm stressed. That's just the nature of the beast. But also too, the students and immigrants who have lived with me over the past 20 years, 2 of them just after COVID made $90,000 a year. And so if you're wondering how 2 students, can make $90,000 a year, they were going to school and they had 2 flipping jobs. And so that's another thing too. When you come in to a different country without your family, you are working your butt off. You will do anything to make money because you're sending money home too. And that just, it gives you such a drive and a determination that it's leaving us white people, our us heritage Canadians, so to speak, in the background, when they just have more gusto to make a dollar than we do. And I think also too, we have to just consider what all is going around in the world and how all of this does affect us. Information is way too easy to grasp. And it's way too easy for us to get excited, upset, hurt, or happy. And I think due to the algorithms, we get stuck in an echo chamber. And like, that's why I like having these conversations. So there are differences of opinion. I do purposely speak to other people that, I kind of think I'm center right politically. I do purposely have conversations with people on the left and on the right to keep myself grounded, to have those conversations. And I think that's one thing that we're kind of going tribal in Canada. It is an us against them. And I think we need to, and that's not a thing the government can help us with. And I realize government's responsibility is immigration, but I do want government to stay out of a lot of things. I want them to help the vulnerable, improve healthcare, because of this mass immigration, we have completely shit the bed on our healthcare system. So in BC, for example, for an emergency X-ray last year, a year ago in November, it took me 5 weeks to get into an emergency X-ray because I fell down my back stairs in the winter. A friend of mine, it was 6 weeks for an MRI, and she had 5 broken bones in her back. So she had to be off work, taking Tylenol and Advil for a ridiculous amount of time. Now she's been on opioids for the pain for a year. So if we can fix that gap, would that help less?
We have problems out here in Ontario to some degree, but I can just tell you, it's not like that here. It's not anywhere.
I hear that I posted it on my Facebook, and my cousin, she broke her arm and she got fixed right away. So, and the thing is if you go in, my colleague went in with a broken back, and they could not take the scans of her for 6 flipping weeks.
What?
And so
no, that would not happen here.
It's just a ridiculous system. And so, we need more. We need more. Absolutely.
Those are provincial issues. The federal government gives transfer payments for healthcare, but those are provincial responsibilities. So you need an improvement out there in BC for sure.
Absolutely.
I've seen improvements since we've had this conservative government in Ontario. Big improvements. As much as I am still upset with Doug Ford because of the way he acted during the pandemic and the lockdowns, I have to say that the conservative government has made huge improvements in the quality of care here in Ontario, but there's still a long way to go. So just very quickly, Angie, anything else before we throw it over to our guest of honor tonight?
In regards to healthcare, when I was really upset with it a year and a half ago, I started looking, and every other country that has first world that has socialist healthcare system. So it's 1 week for an X-ray, it's 1 week for an MRI, it's 1 week for a CT scan. So I think that's one thing that we need to absolutely change, specifically in British Columbia. And that's it. We have an aging population, and we don't have I just saw a statistic the other day that there's 120 beds on some floor in one of our Okanagan hospitals. There's 130 patients in there, so they're in the hallways, and the majority of those are seniors who cannot get into seniors housing right now. So there's a whole other epidemic because we have all of this aging population. We don't have enough doctors to deal with it. And now we don't have enough seniors housing to get them into, and they don't throw them on the streets. But if you're unhoused, the hospital will happily throw you on the streets. So.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe you better move to Ontario, because when I injured my wrist there a few months ago, same day service, got an X-ray, and my dad's 94. He just got his hip replaced, as you know, and he got in, not immediately, but it wasn't like a year. It was just a matter of months, and they got him in, and he's back.
Oh,
he's back up.
9 to 18 months here. 9 to 18 months for knee hip replacement.
Yeah, he was in I think 5 months, I think, and he was given.
We have people who are. I have friends who have paid to go and get hip and knee replacements in Ontario. $35,000 for the hip.
You can do that. You can buy the operation in Ontario. I didn't know they even allowed that because of the universality.
Apparently I have a friend, my former boss, that went there and got a new hip, I believe a year ago. Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I didn't know that they even allowed it here in Ontario, but maybe they do. I suppose they do, because you just said they did. So, Pawan,
yes,
give us your final thoughts for tonight, sir. This is your chance to sum it all up and share anything that you think we might have missed.
No, Rick, just guests have already covered up, and the Canadians should feel secure. System should be accountable. Immigration asylum system should be accountable. Our taxpayer money should be used for the Canadians, not for the other purposes.
Uh-huh.
Legitimate asylum seekers should be given priorities. Bogus claimants should not be, and the system should not be abused. This is all, and the government should care for the Canadians. Their security is the paramount while in Canada, and they should provide all assistance while Canadians are abroad. With this, I would like to thank you very much for this wonderful. You have been such a wonderful host for having me today. It is truly an honor to be here, and I will also like to extend, my thanks, heartfelt thanks to all your viewers of the Maverick channel for tuning in today and making this event so special, and also to my fellow guests, Angel and Rising Dragons. It has been a pleasure sharing this space with you and learning from each of you. I am so much grateful for this opportunity, and thank you very much.
Well, don't leave, because we're in for the grand finale, the main attraction of the entire broadcast.
Okay.
Because last night we had the movie Little Caesar. We run a movie on Friday nights, and Little Caesar, greatest gangster flick of all time, 1931. And Dragon helped me co-host the watch party, and I said, we got to get you to do because he does the French Donald Trump thing for us. Now you got to do the French Edward G. Robinson, or maybe even a James Cagney. I'd take a James Cagney or an Al Pacino or a Robert De Niro or whatever, but give us a French Canadian Italian gangster.
Well,
I would be there.
I do not have any crystal ball. Oh, well, I do. And I will tell you that tomorrow you'll be again with Rick Walker and the Mavericks, because news always get to the news. And one thing, guys, always stay sane, always stay positive, and always look around.
All right. All right. And
go Canada, go. We got to win gold tomorrow. It starts at
Yes.
5:10 Pacific time.
5:10 Pacific AM.
Yeah, that's when the game is tomorrow.
Get
5
out
a.m.
of town. Oh my God. Okay.
You're fine. You can be up by 8 a.m.
All right. Well, now I have
We'll
something to
win
watch over
5-1.
breakfast.
I predict we'll win 5-1.
5-1.
We're going to go into overtime
Yeah.
as per usual. The Canadian, the U.S. We got to win in overtime. We got to make it worth it.
It's going to be a nail biter, maybe. The thing is, Sidney Crosby. I just looked it up because I wanted to end the program partly with it. He did skate in practice. Time decision tomorrow. So the drama builds as we work our way toward the face.
David's warming up the sea he said he's just keeping it warm. So we'll see how that goes. All
right. And I'm sure that Donald Trump will be watching very closely tomorrow too, because he said if we do a deal with China, the first thing they'll do is cancel hockey and take away the Stanley Cup. And it's not them, it's him. He's so jealous of Canada because we won the last tournament. He's just chomping at the bit. He wants to devour Canada. So Trumpzilla will be tuned in tomorrow morning for sure. And with that, I will leave you tonight, folks, with Trumpzilla from Maverick and the News Brothers. See y'all back here tomorrow, all you dirty rats. 7 p.m. Eastern on the flip side. Oh, hang on. Miss start. Gotta let the anticlimactic or what? It's okay. We got her. It's just that the hard drive has to catch up. Hey, bang your head.
Rising from the blast, forged in fire. Storming the swamp, taking it higher. Walls come down, cities quake. No one stops him trash. He's mean, he's green, he's a nuclear machine. Trumpzilla. He's mean, he's green, he's a nuclear machine. Trumpzilla. God in the air. Trumpzilla. He's mean, he's green, he's a nuclear machine. Trumpzilla. He's mean, he's green, he's a nuclear machine. Trumpzilla.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.